This meeting has been posted. Attendance roll call.
Mr. Buckminster is excused. Mr. Bowman. Here. Mr. Strong.
Here.
I am here. Mrs. Warwick.
Here.
Mr. Schrader. Here. Mr. Kowalski.
Here. Thank you. Pledge of Allegiance.
Mr. Kells, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You can go fix it, Eric?
Yes, I after the meeting remind me.
Legs in the wrong order. Yeah. Good. I have approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
One item I'm just going to move. What was it you want to move up? Which item? C?
The discussion for funding.
We can move the discussion for Fund 80 up to first discussion?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to swap discussion items. We're going to move C ahead of A, essentially, if there's no objection. Hearing no objection, all those in favor of the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Moving on to number 2, consent agenda. A motion for consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any items in consent agenda that need separate discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of consent agenda say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Superintendent's report. Ms. Kelly.
Okay, on behalf of Dr. Thompson, I want to recognize the girls softball team for receiving the sponsorship award this year. So congratulations to them. Sportsmanship award. Thank you. So congratulations to them. And then also we want to recognize Mill Valley School. They received the School of Merit, which is a recognition from the state for their work in the PBIS, which is the Positive Behavior Interventions and Support System, for the work that they've done in their school. So congratulations to them as well.
Your superintendent reports are real.
You may have
Straight to the point.
You may have to start doing all of them. Moving on to reports, President's report. This past weekend was graduation. One of my favorite things being in the board, and I think many of you can share with this, is passing out diplomas. It was a very nice event. They pretty much have it down to a science of 90 minutes, give or take a minute. But it was a nice event, and glad to participate in that. And that concludes my report. Board member reports.
I'll just piggyback off your comments about graduation. This is my 5th one that I've been able to attend and hand out diplomas, and every one of them, the kids are just very well behaved. So congratulations to the high school and the staff for making sure that everybody does a good job of getting through it quickly and responsibly. So thank you.
Any other board member reports? Hearing none. Committee reports. Business services?
Yes, we met this evening, various board members in attendance, including the members assigned to the committee. We had 2 agenda items. One was the Muskego High School turf management. Mr. Johnson walked us through a memo that's attached both in the consent agenda and was attached to the particular agenda for the business services. And basically it's moving those services in-house. So a cost savings eventually, as the years roll by, is hoped for. Certain changes within how he's using his people to accomplish that. The other one was the possibility of another option for an on-site location for a health clinic, and there's a portion of the high school that looks promising. We will hear more at a later date.
Thank you. Student representation will resume in fall when the students are back. Public forum. You three have anything to say?
Not right now.
Moving on to number 5, resolution action items. 5A, Lake Noon playground equipment purchase.
Motion. Wake up here. Motion to approve the Lake Noon playground equipment purchase in amount not to exceed $67,000. So.
Second.
Discussion.
I would like to add one thing since the last time we talked about this. The Lake Danoon students actually submitted a video to a company called Kaboom, and it was a video that talked about how important play was during the school day, and we're actually selected as one of the 10 finalists for a grant that would give us about $20,000 toward the cost of that playground. And so 5 out of the 10 finalists will receive $20,000. So Lake Danoon is going to be sending out information to parents who actually go online to vote for which video is your favorite, I guess. And so we will find out if we receive that grant. If that were to happen, we would be able to substitute that $20,000 for the Lake Danoon building budget cost. If it doesn't happen, though, we would still utilize the building budget to support the cost.
I assume that's going to be on our social media as well.
Yes.
What exactly is the special education support? What is that? Is that budgeted money?
It is budgeted money, and because of the type of playground equipment that's being put as part of the playground, there actually are opportunities for students with different handicaps to be able to utilize the facility, and so special ed would be able to take some of their budget money from the end of the year and support the project.
We did the same thing with Bay Lane when we built the playground with Bay Lane Country Meadows. Principal prior to me. Anything else on this? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to 5B, self-fund premium rates.
Motion to approve the self-funded premium rates for the district's health insurance program effective September 1st, 2015, as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
The only addition to this document from the last time, I was asked to bring back our current WPS rates, so those are listed at the bottom of the document. You'll notice that the Blue Preferred Network above the current WPS rates, there is an increase to those rates. And again, if employees want to select the Blue Priority, which is the narrower network, those would be the monthly premium rates that would be assigned to them. And again, we need board approval for these because we are self-funded, and so we do need to establish a set premium on an annual basis.
How are these calculated? I know obviously we work with our consultants to come up with, are we trying to hit like a break even or just a very slight profit on that? Or?
So what we set rates for from a premium perspective are rates that would help us break even. What we budget for, we actually budget for 125% of the cost of the plan. So if we were to run at 100%, these premium rates would cover. What we're actually budgeting for is 25% over that.
Okay.
To help with that, that wiggle room if we were to go over what we actually are estimating based on the underwriters and the actuaries.
So if everything works out well and we hit what we estimate, we're going to have a little excess in there. Does that go into a segregated fund?
We do. We have a separate self-funded fund balance account that we will begin to accumulate money into that account to help us with future rate premiums that we set.
And so next year when it goes to 110% of what we estimate, we got a little bit more cover, or 130. We're a little covered.
So on bad years, we can utilize the money within that fund balance so that we don't have to put it all onto employees. As far as that increase goes, we can offset some of that with money that's in the fund, or depending if we don't have a lot in that fund, we may have to, just like an insurance company would, increase rates. So our goal is to keep them as stable as possible.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Opposed? 5 ayes and 1 abstention. Passes. Thank you. Moving on to resolution action item 5C, staff handbooks.
Motion to approve revisions to staff handbooks as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
These are what we saw before.
What you saw before, correct?
Questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Passes with one abstention. Moving on to resolution action item 5D, insurance renewal update.
Motion to approve the insurance renewals as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Do you want me to go through them one more time?
Sure.
Okay. So the renewals for all of the property, liability, workers' compensation are included. If you go to the document that's called renewal comparison, I'll just briefly walk you through what's being recommended. So with the changes to the local government property investment fund, in order for the fund to sustain itself, rates went up significantly. And so you'll see that the renewal for the local government property fund through Gallagher was about $139,000 compared to our $60,000 premium last year. So we went out to market for the property insurance this year. You'll remember we went out for everything else last year and received property submissions from M3, and they're coming in at about $79,000. So we would recommend going with M3 for our liability, for our property insurance. Also, the automobile physical damage, we're recommending going with M3 and equipment breakdown. And the equipment breakdown is slightly more expensive, but maintaining that package with having the equipment breakdown, the auto, and the property all in one is really recommended. And the other big item, then moving down to our workers' compensation, we'd be staying with United Heartland. And you'll notice that, again, a lot of efforts made on the safety side from a district perspective, and our rates dropped significantly. So we went from a $322,000 premium to a $251,000 premium, with an anticipated dividend at the end of the year of about $12,000. So overall, insurance rates have come in very well for the district, and that we are recommending this information as it's presented.
What does equipment breakdown cover? Is that like if something breaks, it causes damage because it's broken?
Yes. Yeah, so if a pumper to fail and cause damage on something like the pool. The only other one I guess I would talk about would be data compromise, and you'll notice that last year was $569 and the premium has gone up to $1,259. The reason and what data compromise is if our data within the district were to be compromised and people's identities were stolen, we would be responsible for basically the cleanup of that. And it's actually happening more and more, especially in the state to school districts and other companies where that is happening and people are hacking into their systems. And so what this does is it actually takes us from a data compromise coverage of about $100,000 to $250,000, and the insurance company is saying that when you are in that situation, $250,000 does give you what you need to help people get their credit reports and get everybody kind of back on track. So we are making that recommendation as well to increase those limits.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 5E, 2015-16 KPOs and board goals.
Motion to approve the 2015-2016 district key performance objectives and board goals as presented.
So moved.
I believe these were all brought up last meeting. Am I correct? Was it true?
Yes, they were. Dr. Thompson walked through those.
Any questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 5F, occupational therapy services contract for 2015-16.
Motion to approve DPOT services contract at a maximum of 35 hours per week at $43 per hour for the 2015-2016 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Questions? believe this is a pretty standard renewal.
This is a standard renewal. Kari always reviews the services and what we'll need based on the IEPs and makes a recommendation for the maximum hours per week. And the rate is what it's, very similar to what it's been.
Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. 5G, CISA services contract for the 2015-16 school year.
Motion to approve the CISA 1 services contract for 2015-2016 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, questions, comments?
Again, this is the standard contract that we renew with CISA every year. Again, the largest item are the seats that we have for new pathways, and those are determined every year based on need. And the other area is our autism consultative coaching. It's easier to contract out with CISA for that than to bring somebody on board.
Hearing no questions, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 5H, donations.
Motion to accept with thanks the donation of $600 from Marilyn Thompson for the Muskego High School Band.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving on to discussion items. Discussion item 6C, Fund 80 transfer from fund balance.
Okay, so we have both John Giddel and Matt Warner, here today. At the last board meeting, we had talked through in business services this opportunity that we have in Fund 80 to utilize some of the funds for moving them out of Fund 80 into Fund 10. This is a one-time opportunity for us, and so there were some questions that I was asked to respond to as far as from a DPI perspective. Once we move the money, are they checking up on what we're utilizing it for? Can we utilize it for operations? And so in response to that, DPI says once you move the money, there is no time limit as to when you utilize the funds. What they are expecting is if you are saying that you are moving this money and you're telling the taxpayers that you're moving this money, and for this purpose, if you choose to do something different, that you would report that out at a meeting. You don't have to do any follow-up with DPI. So we would be very general to DPI in requesting what we would be utilizing the funds for. And we can use them for operations as well. So we have that ability. At the same time, I had met with both John and Matt, and we're talking a little bit more about the needs at the PAC. We're kind of in that cycle where we're ready to start replacing equipment. And so the two opportunities together could give us, the option to replace some equipment. And so you had asked that we bring both of them back, that you might have specific questions as to some of the bigger ticket items like the soundboard and the wireless microphones and the need that really exists and how urgent of a need it is versus, if it's something that we can plan out over the next couple of years. So they're here to answer questions. I don't know if it'd be easier for them to stand at the mic or sit at the table, or what you would prefer.
You guys want to just grab the mic and stay seated, that's fine too, just so people can hear you at home. Feel free to stand there if you wish, but you don't have to.
Well, when Matt's on a microphone, he's used to singing, so we'll excuse you from that tonight. Yeah, because, the last rap that we heard from you. So maybe John will do more of the speaking, right? Yeah. It would be helpful for me, John, so if you could just kind of walk me through, kind of the major ticket items that you have in order. So it looks like you have the soundboard replacement?
Yeah, the soundboard replacement is the first item that I really feel like needs to happen. Right now, the soundboard that we currently have in the PAC is 12 years old, and when we got it, it was used. I don't know how long it was used before that. It's an analog soundboard. The company that made it is out of business. They were bought out and then dismantled. So there's no longer any opportunity to get replacement parts for it. And this came about because I brought in Pro Audio Designs, who are the team that brought the board into us, and also we've used for several other purchases after that. And I asked them about some issues that I started having coming up with the board. As you know, kind of like your car, one little thing starts going, and then, you take it to the mechanic, and they're like, oh, okay, well, we fixed this, but we can't fix that. Well, our mechanic said that they won't even open the hood because the company is out of business, and it's hard to get replacement parts. There's more likely a chance of them breaking something when they go in and try to fix something and not being able to repair it. So they won't even open it up at this point. That combined with the fact that the industry has really moved in the digital region in terms of soundboards. The old school is what we have, the analog, where you have hardwired everything for every channel of, so this microphone runs into a channel, and you have hard control over all of that. In the digital world, you share the hardware among many channels. You still have the board that I'm looking at, the Yamaha CL5, which is the reason that I'm suggesting this one over the Allen & Heath is a British-made board, and if it had to be serviced, it has to be sent to Britain. So that kind of took that one right off the plate for me. The Yamaha QL5, which is the smaller version of the CL5 board that they just came out with last year, is missing a really key knob on all of the channels that you have on the board that I felt warrants the extra $15,000. There's lots of other bangs and whistles that you get with the CL5 versus the QL5, but the biggest one is, so there's a knob at the top of every channel that's your major volume, and then you have a slider that controls your minor volume on that. On the QL5s, they do not all have that knob. They only have one knob for all 32 channels. So you actually have to select each individual channel and adjust that knob. This can be very difficult when you're running multiple mic situations, because a lot of times when you get into feedback situations, you have to quickly get something down. Having that knob right there is very handy, and I think in terms of having students on it, I feel the QL5 is a board much more intended for experienced engineers versus students running the board. They're already a little nervous because there's so many knobs and sliders and things that they're confused. And this is going to be a big step forward for them. But
So where would this soundboard sit?
it would be in the same location.
Okay.
It's physically about 2/3 the size. So we're getting a much smaller, but can do 20. It can do 72 channels, and our current board can do 48 channels. So that means that it can have 72 separate microphones out there with the new board versus just 48 with the current board.
So it increases your capacity. Say you were doing one of Matt's musicals, and you want to have all principals and secondary on their own mic systems with their own channels. You can't do that beyond how many now?
Currently, we have 48. Now, 48 would include all of the wireless microphones plus all of the wired microphones.
Okay.
So the band and the pit get wired as well.
Okay.
So the other big advantage that the digital board takes us into is the ability to recall, to save and recall. So we get into a tech situation with, if we get there, 40 microphones, 40 wireless microphones, and about 10, 12 microphones in the pit at least. And now the operator doesn't have to sit there and unmute all of these individual microphones. They can just recall the scene. It will put everything in the general area that it's supposed to be and pulls. So the board has 32 actual faders on it, and those can be set up in layers. So you can put every channel, so you have 1 through 64, those are each in one layer, and then you have a couple of custom layers that you can make where you can have all of your principals in one certain area, all of your band in another area. The other thing that it really does for us is right now we have 5 outputs on our current board. This would take us up to having 16 outputs plus the mains. So that means that when the pit asks for separate monitoring systems so that they can hear what's going on, right now I'm really limited to 2 channels on stage that I can give them in the pit. With this, I would be able to give them up to 16 separate inputs. So the drummer can be listening to this singer plus a little bit of the guitar and this and that, and the conductor can be listening to a completely separate mix. And then it really opens up our spectrum of control of what we're doing within the system. And it's what the kids are going to see when they get out of it. The board that we have right now, they're not going to see that. It's a dinosaur. It's done. Now, it's really nice because they can touch, feel every single little thing, but I can teach them the same things on the digital board with not having to have every single knob. They're going to know where those knobs are. They're all still there. They're just shared. Like, you have to select the channel, and then you can adjust all those individual knobs.
And in your past experience, you've worked on a digital board?
I have.
Okay, so from your experience, the board at the high school versus what you've seen on a digital board, I mean, what's your take on it?
The digital board just is a lot more user-friendly. There's a lot more learning curve at first, but your ability to recall and separately group everything is really fantastic. It gives them a lot more control over that stuff. The board that we have right now, the issues that came up, we have a ghosting issue in the mains, so every once in a while I get a little flutter of, and the way that we've been controlling that is we pull that master down and run everything else at a hotter level, and that seems to work. But the one that really has me concerned now is there's some channels. I currently have 8 groups that I can assign on the analog board. Of those 8, so I can put several channels into a group so that we can control that, and we can run EQ so that we can put out what the sound frequencies. We can decide to cut some or boost some. So the biggest place that this helps is a lot of times when you get feedback from microphones. What it is just one individual frequency that's coming out of the speakers, going back into the microphone. You just need cycle, and that's where you hear that high switch field. Well, we have a 32-band equalizer that we can actually pick out the individual frequency and pull that down. Currently, we have 6 of those. With the new board, we would have up to 28, I believe. And the ability to put it wherever we want it without having to actually physically plug stuff in. So that's another big advantage with the board. Is basically it takes a room full of gear and gets rid of the majority of it. We would be able to get rid of most of our outboard gear, this giant board, and be able to go down to a smaller board. And then the other thing that it does is it runs off of Cat5 cable instead of all individual run 3-wire cable, which is what we currently have in the PAC. Now, we'd still be able to utilize the majority of that, but this would give us the addition. Like right now in the pit, I only have 5 microphone inputs. With them just running Cat5 cable and the setup that I have worked with Pro Audio on getting is I get 2 16-channel in, 8-channel out boxes that I could put at either of the 2 locations that I have them run Cat5 to, and I can daisy chain off of this. So now I go from having 5 mic inputs in the pit to having the ability to have 32 inputs and 60 mics versus 5 and 2. That's the big thing with the digital, is that we're still going to be able to utilize the majority of our current equipment. but it allows us to utilize a much greater spectrum of what we're capable of doing. And also, it runs off of a iPod app, or an iPad app, I'm sorry, so that the students can get out of the booth, so they're not listening to everything like this, because that's essentially what the booth is doing, is it's making it so that they're hearing it muffled, which one of the big things that I really worked on this year was trying to get them to get it out in the house and actually hear what the audience is hearing. This app will allow them to walk around and make adjustments from the audience perspective without having to pull the board out. Now, we'll still pull the board out for the musicals, because we'll need far more control than the app allows. The app only allows you to see about 8 channels at a time.
So John, what is the warranty and expected life of the soundboard?
The warranty, I'm not sure on. I'd have to check into that. But the expected life on this board is at least 10, 15 years. And, you know, that's the nice thing about going to the Yamaha is Yamaha isn't going. Crest, when we bought it, Crest was a decent sound company. They had a really strong presence in speakers primarily and their boards, but the digital age came along and kind of blew them out of the water. They didn't make that conversion from analog to digital. So the Yamaha is going to be a brand that we're going to see continue to go, and they're going to support. This is their top of the line board, and it is used widely in the touring industry, and the cruise ships are also using it, and there's a lot of houses that put this in there, much like the.
And then I'm curious about the difference in the cost between professional audio and the mic shop. And you explained it up above that you don't think the mic shop quite got what the scope of this. What else is involved besides just replacing the soundboard? Are you going to be running extra Cat 5 wires?
Yeah,
You're going to use the current ones you have?
We'll use the current ones that we have. We'll run additional Cat 5 to 2 locations, one to the pit and one to stage left on stage. And then there will be a permanent rack-mounted 32 input that will be put into the current rack that I have in the sound booth. And then these 2 Cat 5s will allow me to have those, the mobility of putting those on stage where I need them. When I talked to the mic shop, and they actually came out and demoed a board for me. They demoed one of the Allen and Heaths, and it was actually a used board that they had. So it wasn't the one that we actually see here that I was hoping that they were showing me. It was a lesser model that was a used model. And when I talked to them about install and stuff like that, they didn't really want to talk about running cable for these locations. So I think what they were thinking is that I would be in charge of running all the cable and installing all of that. They would provide the equipment, and they would come in and do some of the install, but it didn't sound like they do all of the install. And having met and worked with both now, I just felt far more comfortable working with Pro Audio Design. They seem to stand behind their work. Like when we ran into problems with the graduation video, I was able to call them up, and even though they hadn't installed that system, they tried to help me troubleshoot through it over the phone. And were one of the people that were going to be able to get me some parts that I needed to make the video happen for this Saturday, but I was able to get it faster through an electrician. But they just installed a monitor. We now have a full speaker monitor system in the PAC lobby that they just put in. That we have chimes now that alert people. And I worked with them throughout that process, and they were very knowledgeable and very willing to help train me on everything. That was the other aspect that I felt that the Mike shop was missing out on a little bit. The rep was showing me the board, but he didn't fully really understand the board as well that he was showing.
Thank you.
Hey, I love you guys, but I don't know what you just said for the last 10 minutes. And I'm not too sure Brett does either. I know Lisa does.
Yeah.
So here's my question. If there was $60,000 available for you to do capital improvements at the PAC to benefit your programming, what would you spend that $60,000 on?
If I had to go with just 60,000, the board has to happen.
Okay.
The board's on its last legs. Like, at any point, it could just stop working, and that's my big fear. And we
Okay.
have no backup.
So that's 30 to 40,000, right?
Yeah,
Can you get a little more exact on it? You think where are you? More towards 40 or 30?
the 45.
45.
The Yamaha, yeah.
Okay. Do the 16 mics that are currently working, will they work with that system?
They were.
Okay. So what's next? You got 15 left.
The rest of it I would spend on microphones, whatever I could get for that. Here's the problem that we have with the current microphone situation. We own 24. 8 of them are illegal, so we can't use them anymore.
What's illegal? What do you mean by that?
The FCC auctioned off spec
They're
portions
using
of the
different
spectrum.
bandwidth, okay.
Yeah, and these were bought prior to that, and I didn't realize it until Pro Audio came in and said, oh, whoa, those are in this spectrum, we can't use them. I said, oh, okay. But then,
You can't adjust frequency.
right,
It's like, that's the frequency that's a part of it.
I understand that, but
You could use it.
you can use them, you just can't sell
Well, no, you can use it, but if someone complained to the FCC that you were
them.
interfering,
Yeah.
then they would come and,
well, and here's
So you
the
get a
other
warning
thing.
first, but
They-
whatever.
They're the low man on the totem pole. So if you think of the wireless signal like a garden hose, and there's several spigots in front of you, if anyone else turns on the spigot, we stop getting water. And that's what we actually experienced during the musical. We'd have mics that would just drop out.
So that's what was happening?
That was what was happening.
And that's what's been happening for years.
Yeah.
But we didn't know until now.
So that's
Okay.
a big part of, and then the FCC has put out to auction the next band, which 8 more of those microphones fall into. And actually, the microphones that are in, the wireless microphone that's in the gym, the 2 that are in the cafeteria at the high school, as well as the one that's in 243, are all in this upper 600 series of the spectrum. And so they've gone to auction. Now they're collecting their data. What they're going to do is they're going to rework who gets what in the 600 spectrum and come out with a public announcement. When they come out with that public announcement, we have 39 months before we cannot use them anymore legally. But the problem with this is that if someone in Milwaukee has suddenly decided that they want to use the spectrum that we're on, and they turn on the water, ours won't work anymore. So we'll get that same problem that we had with the microphones that we shouldn't be using already.
so the reason I asked that question is, the fund that we're moving this money from was set up for operations of the PAC, which to me, even back in 2002 when it was set up, or 3 or whatever it was, to me as a taxpayer, that meant not only capital improvements, but operational. And I think that's the way we've been using it, is we've paid part of salaries out of that fund also. So to be fair to the taxpayers, what my thought was, and you'll chime in and tell me I'm wrong or right, but is that we would at minimum pay 1 year's salary, operational salary of the PAC director out of that money, and the balance be used for capital improvements. Just a thought.
Have we ever done that? Paid salary out of there?
Out of Fund 80, yes,
For how long?
since it's open. That's where we've been
That's where we've
paying
been pulling
it.
it out of.
But now because of the
But it's
changes,
not been coming in from, I mean, it's not like a separate source going into there to pay that
so
salary.
the $95,000 tax levy for Fund 80 would support salary, benefits, and then all expenses within, as well as revenues that would come in from the utilization of the PAC. So it's a combination of the levy plus the revenues, and what's left in fund balance right now, from 2005 forward, the 100,000 is from, if you assume you used up all the tax levy every year, it would be, that's what was left from all the revenues that have been earned from renting the facility over 10 years.
So it's probably mostly revenue, but a little bit of maybe some tax levy that may not have gotten used in a certain year.
Right, there were a couple years where we didn't use 5,000 to 8,000 or something like that, yeah.
But all the maintenance for the PAC came out of that fund.
We could charge a percentage, you mean utilities, those types of things, or just the supplies, equipment?
Was there any maintenance that needed to be done? As an example,
Carpet cleaning or.
the Salentine gym has to have the floor redone every once in a while. That's a I would consider that to be a maintenance type thing. Has there been anything like that?
If we would have done anything like at the PAC, it would have come out of Fund 80, yes.
And the floor does get treated every year as well.
20 years,
And that comes out of,
Fund 80.
Well, I'm gonna ask a different question. I hear you.
Yeah.
But my question goes back to those wireless microphones. So there's how many that well, if we use them, they could cut out. How many presently?
Currently, we have 16 that we can use. The 8 that are illegal, I will not.
Okay. So, when you look, it's prioritized so that the soundboard would be first? And are the wireless microphones your second priority?
They are.
And why?
I shared with them your document that you provided to me,
So
just
that's
so you know
what
what
I'm
they're looking at.
not just pointing to it randomly.
The third item that I have on there is the curtains.
Yeah, right, okay, so the wireless microphones.
So the wireless microphones, we have been struggling to support the musical. Right now, the way that it currently works is that we have a lot of mic sharing, which I'm okay with having happen, but there's sometimes where we don't have any microphones in the ensemble at all.
I'll just point out a couple of categories. So we plot out, okay, here are all the characters who have lines, and then this person has to have a microphone in the entire show. Hey, this person only needs a microphone the first half, this person only needs one the second half. They can share one. So we kind of plot it out like that. But what winds up happening is that there are people who have lines that don't get a mic. It's just not possible to give them one. So when you come to see the show, that's why you have two people talking like this, and I can be heard really well, and then John replies, and no one can hear anything. And we've dealt with that for years. So that's one of the scenarios. Another piece of it is the fact that you have all the leads and supporting leads, of course, and then there's the course. We have a large course. One of the basic pieces of philosophy that's driven what I've done as director is that we have a big show. As many kids as possible can get a chance to be in the show. And when 100 of them audition, we know there's interest in it. So we take a cast of about 50-ish, and so you've got a large chunk of those kids who their job is in the chorus. And they literally work, for 3 months on those, 3 to 4, sometimes 5 big chorus numbers. Now, our kids in the choral program and the whole music program are used to working toward a certain level of excellence. And so we work really hard for a long time at perfecting these things, and they work and they work and they feel great and they feel great, and then they get out on stage and no one can hear them. And it's really too bad. It's really too bad when that happens because their parents want to hear them. they've worked just as hard as anybody else, and they deserve to be heard. So that's the other category. If down the road, I would love for every single kid to have a microphone. That right down to every single chorus kid, because they're part of the production too. Now that would, over some time maybe, but what John is presenting is maybe a step toward that. We made a step this year for sure in the quality of things, and what John's presenting would be another step in that direction. So we kind of have some different categories of, leads, chorus, and so forth. Oh, and then there's that category of kids who do have mics that you just blend out, but they cut out all the time. Anytime a signal goes to anyone's phone, it's out. So.
And the other big thing that I would like to see going forward is to support the middle school musicals.
You anticipated my next question.
They are really struggling. I've been struggling a lot with trying to find the balance in that space. The space is a little bit difficult. It's a little bit challenging in the fact that the pit cover that you see out there was never intended to be there by the designers of the theater. That was always intended to be an open pit so that you didn't have kids that were out past there. The problem with kids going all the way to the front edge of the stage is the cabinets of the speakers that hang up there. They can now see the sound that's coming in. So sound travels in waves. It does wonderful things. It rounds around corners. It does things like that. Feedback comes from when the speaker produces a sound wave that goes into the microphone and becomes this continuous loop that just goes in a circle. So obviously, having your speakers in front of your microphones, pointing away from your microphones, will help a lot. What the challenge is with middle schools is, one, Bay Lanes is so large that there's no way we can get around not utilizing the pit area for them. They need to be able to come out there because we have 113 kids on stage at some point, so they're even in the aisles singing, which is awesome. Which is great. It's fantastic that we have that much interest in the musicals, and but the problem is to do that I have to push the microphones that I'm using to pick them up further down. Now these microphones are picking up in a bigger spectrum. They're meant to be picked up someone this far away from them. The microphones that we're looking at for the wireless are actually worn on the face. So I'm not having to amplify as much, and I'm not picking up as much of that. It's kind of like if you think of the beam of a microphone, it's like the beam of a flashlight. And you want that beam right where your sound is really coming out. That's why when people hold their microphones down here, it drives sound guys crazy because your sound isn't coming and going right into the microphone. That's why the wireless are the best option that we have. Now, the other challenge that I have with the younger the kid is, the more I get worried about the expensive equipment that I'm putting on them. And that's where we need a little bit more training and more crew to be able to run those. So those are the two things that I'm focused on. The reason this year I told them that they'd have the opportunity to use up to, I think it was 6 or 7 wireless microphones. But the problem with doing that is you get the one kid that sounds really, really great, and the kid that's right next to them that you can't hear them. So it's almost a little bit better if everyone's, trying to project into the microphones they're on, or in those situations.
So your request, if you could, it would be 24 wireless microphones. And do you run into a future problem with the FCC on these?
These are in the lowest spectrum that we have for wireless microphones. So these would be the last. And if the FCC gets to that point, I don't know what the industry's going to do. I mean, Broadway's already up in arms about the 600 service. But what they're doing is they're making microphones that take more, that can put more within a spectrum. So right now we run in a 6 TV channel spectrum, And our old microphones can run about 10 in that spectrum. The new ones can run up to 17 in that spectrum. So they're getting better with the technology. But it makes me nervous. It really does. And I don't see, there's no way to stop it. It's the FCC that has all the control of this. When they did the first auction and they lost the 700 series, there were everyone from Broadway to churches that really lost out on that deal. Because what it was you had the microphone, everything still worked fine for you, but the FCC turned off the water. You were like, okay. And basically, they had no recourse but to buy new stuff.
I talked to Matt about this. I'm really kind of surprised that, I mean, essentially the microphone, wireless mics you're talking about, and the ones we have that we can't use, not a lot of difference between them other than maybe one or two chips that could be replaced, and I would think they'd work. I don't know for sure, but there really is, I know you can't manually adjust it, but I would think you'd be able to wire in a couple new chips and you'd be ready to go. Have we even checked on that?
The manufacturers, when they came out with the 700 series loss, all that they did was offer a discount to people that had those microphones to buy new microphones. There was never any kind of reconditioning agreement that was for that.
What about like the professional audio designs? Do they
buy their microphones right?
They don't do any repair work like that.
They don't. If it became something that severe, it's so technical that it's sent off to the manufacturer.
Doesn't sound like the manufacturer's going to do that then.
They're more interested in selling them.
John, do any high schools rent microphones?
There is an option of doing that. I haven't looked fully into that yet, but I know that Mr. Krause looked into it when he bought the microphones that are no longer good. He bought those used from Pro Audio. They came out of their rental year. And he bought them for the same price as what it would have cost him to rent them for 1 year, and was able to use them. I think, when I look back, I think I saw that he bought them in 2008, 2009, and so he was able to use them for a couple of years. But that's something else that you could definitely look into. But I can tell you for sure that would take it completely out of the middle school's ability. They don't have anybody.
Quite frankly, it may take it out of the high school's ability. The musical budget, like all other budgets in the district, has been decreasing, and we barely got enough to put the show on that we do right now. Music parents have been helping us out with that the last few years.
Do any high schools share wireless mics?
I don't know of any.
The reason I ask is, so going down this, looks like you're talking about $2,000 per wireless mic. So if you got 16 now, if you bought 8, that would put you right at that $60,000 mark. I'm sure Krause has probably that same amount, 24 over in Franklin. I mean, is there any way that we talked a little bit about this last time we were here, you weren't here, but understanding that it's not quite the same to practice with 24 mics and then put on a show with 48 mics because Krause gives us 24 for that week period. Understanding that's not the same, and it's probably more difficult for you than it is for your performers because you have to make sure it all works. But I mean, is that something we could think about? And I'm sure they run a musical at a different weekend of the year. I would expect since he used to work here, we'd have some in, and we could swap, those mics back and forth.
It's hard because not only do we utilize the microphones for the musicals, but I out of the 16 that I have working right now, 8 of them our wireless handhelds. They get used for almost every thing that happens in the PAC.
But the question is, if that was the case and you could do that, how many times do you really need 50 mics?
It's just that one, it's just the music. And so it's really 2 weeks for the high school
Right.
musical. It's a week for each, so it's 4 weeks that we'd be looking at that for all the musicals.
I'd like to offer a thought about that, maybe John will jump in. The scenario in which schools are sharing microphones, if they were our microphones that we were sharing out to another school, I would be really nervous about that. I mean, this is, having worked with Steve for all these years, Kraus, this is probably some of the most sensitive equipment maybe in the building, and I'm just going to hazard a guess on that one. You know, if it were tables or something like that, you know, sure. You know, I've certainly rented props from other schools and things like that. But boy, oh boy, you know, when our guy isn't the one who's in charge and overseeing that incredible investment, boy, that would be real nervous. Just knowing how sensitive that they are.
You gotta understand our concern, though. You're asking for a lot of money that we use once a year.
Yeah.
That's where we're having a little trouble.
I understand.
I understand that. Well, and we don't really just use it once, because like.
Well, not many, that large
Yeah.
quantity.
That large of a quantity, but we do use them for the opening,
Back to school.
back to school thing. We had everyone on wireless for that. During the jazz show, I used several of them. You know, these are the kinds of things that if we had this set up, I would be able to even think about supporting more in the gymnasium for like the Midnight Men concert that I just recently did. The reason that I can't really take that and travel is that that's not set up to travel, those wireless microphones. The way that I'm having the setup that I'm trying to purchase would be a mobile unit that could travel to the gymnasium for that, could travel to the cabaret if we wanted to support that as well. This could be utilized more within the school. It just makes me nervous. Anytime you take equipment and send it out, it always comes back broken. Like, there's a reason that tours have 4 times the equipment that they need, because when you pull equipment off of the truck, inevitably some of it's not working. And so that would be my, I mean, I absolutely understand where you're coming from. So.
I would like to just point out one of the other things. I know that when you get a group of people together, there's going to always be different perceptions of things. And I know that, you know, that maybe a perception of a high school stage crew. I know there maybe are perceptions out there across the country in high school stage crew. You might not think of a real, you know, clean organization or as far as professional. I would submit to you that this falls right in line with helping to prepare our students to be college and career ready. As you heard, John's got the knowledge, and this is a viable career. You know, when John talks about having a soundboard in there that kids will see after they leave our high school, this is a viable career path. This is a viable course of study in college. And you know, we've got kids who have come out of this program who have been really well trained, and you can make a good living at this. And I would suggest to the board to just, if you don't already, to think about this in those terms a little bit. That this is a whole other avenue that a lot of high schools don't have the opportunity to offer their kids because they don't have a job, you know, or they don't have a facility like that. This district does, and I think it's just an incredible opportunity just to offer another career path to our students. We got a kid right now who could probably step out and work professionally.
Oh yeah, yeah. I would if I was asked about him, I would definitely send him to the union with no, he works better and has a higher knowledge base than some of the union guys that I've worked with in the past and being professional staging. So, just something to consider.
Any other questions for these two gentlemen?
Not for these two, but I have something for Kelly. Or, I'm sorry, Kelly.
Sure.
Same thing. You said that.
You guys can have a seat if you want.
Thank you.
So, Julie, going forward, let's look next year, the year after, 5 years down the road. As that PAC gets older and maintenance needs like this arise, where does that, do we have to come up with, I mean, so we're getting rid of Fund 80.
We are,
So
essentially. So
where,
what are we going to do?
what are we going to do?
Yep, so that's going to be part of Fund 46. Moving forward, it's what we're going to have to do, and thank you to Jen for putting together a plan that really does go 5 years out, and we'll continue that plan. We're going to have a maintenance plan in place, just like we have our 10-year maintenance plan for the facilities in general. And our goal will be to start looking at some of those things 5 years down the road that we're going to need to fund. And at the end of every year, as we talk about transferring money into Fund 46, and again, that fund is one that we can transfer money this year. It's expensed this year, but it can accumulate, and when we spend it, it doesn't impact our aid. So when we have those big purchases, it hits our aid, because the more we spend, the more aid we lose. And so it's just going to be one of our planning processes that we're going to have to look at, similar to what we're looking at with the referendum. We're not going to be able to do everything, but there are things that are going to have to get done even if a referendum passes. So that's going to be part of our planning process. And Jeremiah and I already, have started talking about what that looks like from a facility standpoint, but we would have to incorporate the PAC because it is one of our facilities. It just has different needs. So we do have to start essentially putting money away and planning for those things as they come up. We do have a budget, that will support supplies and equipment, and so, we try to spread things out as much as possible, but we do have big ticket things, and really the soundboard is one of the biggest ticket things besides a lighting system, right? That would be kind of the other big thing, and the curtains. And really, from that point, then you can plan another 10, 15 years out for replacing those items. So we just have to get that process going.
Going to carpeting and reupholstering the seats and all that.
Besides facilities, big capital, yes.
Yeah. You touched on something I just needed. Dean, did you answer your question? Moving this into Fund 46?
This will be Fund 10. This will be our general operations.
So, no, moving this.
Oh, moving money in. We're moving this money in particular into Fund 21.
Okay, so we move into Fund 21 and we spend it from 21. Are we negatively tertiary aided?
No, it doesn't impact. The only way that it would impact our aid, because the Fund 21 is a gifts and donations, so it doesn't impact the aid formula. The only way it would is if we substituted it for certain operations and then so if, let's say we were to use it for utilities, and then instead of paying for utilities, we did that on something else, that would be an extra cost within Fund 10. There could be a way that it would impact, but it would have to be so much more than what we're spending to actually, and I had that conversation with TPI.
So you can't use Fund 21 donations for general operations?
You can for this purpose, but normally Fund 21.
I mean, without impacting aid?
Correct.
I'm sorry. So Fund 80 is going away for us? No.
It's not going away. It does exist. It's just there are stricter regulations as to how you determine what's being paid out of Fund 80 and what you're levying for.
So are we lowering the amount then that we're going to?
We essentially will probably have no levy in Fund 80.
Okay. So in essence, it's going in all practicality.
We can still keep it open for certain things. If we were to take on rec programs or anything like that, that would be the ideal use because it would be totally community-based. But when we have that split, even with like the swim, the SWAT, the open swim, but the district still uses the pool, having that split, they're not really letting us segregate out how much is maintenance for high school, how much is maintenance for Fund 80. They're saying it has to be your general operation.
Well, how can a rec department do any different? Rec departments use pool and they have swimming lessons. Rec departments have...
Because the rec department, because that budget is completely separate from intermingling, and essentially you're renting the facility for that purpose.
And our community swim doesn't do that? supposed to be. I mean,
The
maybe not in a
open
separate fund,
swim
but
piece is probably the only component that we can really
mm,
separate out the revenues and expenses.
sports fields in the summer when you see it takes them, the maintenance.
They're saying you're renting the facility and that's part of your general operation of running that facility, even if it's for community use.
So if we just did it free, we could do it?
I'd have to check with DPI.
You might want to look at which way is better to do it. Might not make sense to rent them.
And leave the levy in Fund 80.
What's the big advantage to 80? It just does not impact our rate.
The advantage to 80 was that you had the ability to levy as much as you wanted without having an unpaid revenue cap. So it started getting taken advantage of. And so now the state's scaling back and saying, can't raise it anymore. And now you have to prove exactly what is being spent for community purposes. And that's getting
Is
harder
that
and
because the
harder to
rules
do.
were just too lax as to
Mhm.
what?
People were saying, about 50% of our athletics, use the facility, but at least 50% is being used by community groups. We'll prove it. Well,
I'm sure
You know.
DPI doesn't want to, and the state doesn't want to go through an audit every school
right.
for what's used for what. It would be.
Right. So
Which I don't have a problem with it. The problem is now we're going to have a bubble.
we will have a bubble. We can look into that though, and have that as part of the budget conversation. We bring up the levy recommendations.
Any other questions? Be coming back for action next meeting?
We will ask for the resolution to make the transfer at the next meeting. And we have until the 31st to actually move the money. And then if we could look at bringing back a discussion just about the possibility of some equipment being utilized from those funds, we could bring it back at that time as well.
How's the board want that? One discussion or two separate things, the fund and then the spending?
Separate.
I think separate.
Do you want it brought back as a discussion or an action? For the actual, for the resolution, it has to be an
You can do
action, but
action.
the other one?
You can do action on both. You can
And you
always
can just pull
defer
it?
it, or
Okay.
we don't have to take action at night. All right, anything else? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Moving in with the agenda, discussion item 6A, 2015-16 budget.
So we are bringing back, we had talked a little bit at the last meeting about how if the budget goes through as being proposed at this point, we wouldn't have to do that second tier of reductions. I didn't have this document for your review at that time, so we're bringing it back. Tier 1 adjustments, we would still have to move forward with the general reductions to balance the budget. There would be about $90,000 that we would have the ability to reallocate, and so we're looking at what that could be as far as personnel and programming. But Tier 2 essentially would be eliminated as far as anything that we would need to do for the purpose of next year. So it's more just an informational update.
Why are those certain items highlighted?
So at the time that we presented, those were items that the board would have had to take action on due to personnel timelines or contract timelines.
Okay.
And we talked through the SRO piece, so that was, and the other personnel pieces were approved already. So.
What is higher art reduced costs through the career?
Yeah, sorry about that. So we would be replacing an art teacher with a new teacher, and so those costs of hiring lower would be about a $30,000 savings from a more veteran teacher to a new teacher.
Any other questions?
How do we reduce the workers' compensation by 17%?
By getting hurt less.
Yeah, but you can't predict that stuff.
No,
Well,
it's
you
based on
can't.
your experience.
Right, it's based on our experience, but it's based on the experience of 3 years prior to the current year. So as we meet with our workers' comp carrier, they give us estimates as to what they think based on which workers' comp cases are still out there, which ones we're still paying out, and which ones are dropping off.
So this has got to happen, that,
You already approved tonight the workers' comp insurance premium factoring that in. Mhm. Yep, so that's set. But we're going to try to
I
keep
was
that
thinking
safety
it's
thing
separate.
going.
because it's- okay.
Any other questions for Ms. Kelly?
So what was, on tier 2, what's salary and related benefits? What was your?
So we have salary increases built into the budget. And we would have lowered that by about 1% in total. So salary and related benefits, so anything that's tied to salary, so your FICA, your WRS is all a percent of salary. So we would have just lowered the amount of salary increases that we would have recommended to the board.
Anything else? Good air for you still. Okay. Moving on. Item 6B, Fund 46 transfer.
Okay, so we just wanted to bring this back, again, for just a brief discussion. We ran, at the second last payroll of the year, which happened last Friday, we run all of our summer payrolls. And then we have one more payroll to run through the end of this year, which is on the 26th. And once we have that number in, we'll be really in a good spot to make a recommendation. If we do have money left over in the budget, do we want to move it into fund balance just in general for future planning purposes as we talk about the referendum and those types of things? Or do we want to start moving money into 46? You know, we established the fund this year, but we really haven't funded it in any capacity. So we have the ability to put fund balance into the budget this year. And so we would be bringing that back in July, and we would actually have to have the board approve it on July 15th so that we could, or the 13th, whatever the meeting is, so we can make the transfer by the 31st. If we want to use any funds that were left over from this year to support that.
What's the minimum you have to put into fund?
There is no minimum.
$1.
You could put in $1.
Okay.
You could put in $1.
Fresh
just to
my
start the
memory
fund.
what Fund 46 is.
So Fund 46 is the new fund that allows us to put money in for facility and capital improvements. We can expense that transfer in the budget this year. So if it's within the budget, it doesn't impact our aid any more than we anticipated. And it allows us to accumulate that money. 5 years from now is when we can first dip into it. And then every year thereafter. But once that money is in there, we can spend larger chunks without it impacting us negatively on the aid side, because we've already expensed those funds on our books. So it's new to us this year. It's the first time they've ever allowed it. Thank goodness.
5 years from the time we opened it, or 5 years from the time we funded it?
5 years from the time we've opened. So we established it this year, so 5 years from this year, we'll be able to,
But after 5 years, we could put $100,000 into it and then pull it out the next year.
yes,
We
yes.
can do whatever.
Yep, we
It's
just have
that
a 5-year
waiting.
waiting period initially, and then every year thereafter, you can fund it, use it, however you see fit.
Now, am I correct on the statement of, if, say, we put $100,000 into it, and we spend $100,000, it'll cost us $100,000, but if we do it out of our fund balance, it's $100,000, it's really gonna cost us $125,000 based on our aid costs? So if we're 25% negatively tertiary aid?
Yeah, we're about, yes, yeah. If we
Just
use
so
it-
everyone understands what we're talking about and why we wanna do that.
It's trying to balance out what we lose on tertiary aid.
Well, it eliminates it.
Well, we pay for it the year we put it in,
Essentially,
but
yes.
not the year we pull it out. Yeah, so if we have a good year and we can afford to take a little bit of a hit, that 25,000 hit on 100. That's a good time to put it in.
Yeah, so if we put in the 100,000 this year, it would be negative tertiary when we put it in.
Okay, so you're not saving
It would be
it.
an expense on our books, where it would be,
So what's the advantage of doing it?
the advantage of doing it is that when we do a $2 million project, or if you're saving for like a roof replacement.
Not all at once.
You can do it all at once, but it doesn't negatively impact you, so your taxes don't go up the
Okay.
next year.
Okay.
So it just takes a lot of calculating on your part to try and get it, so we're putting in what we expect without getting a hit.
So we're better off doing it over the next 5 years versus what you had mentioned of
All at once.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
Thanks for clarifying.
yes.
Any other questions on this? And when will this?
The next meeting in July will make a recommendation to how much we can fund this year.
Thank you. Item 6D, revisions to the 2015-16 MHS academic guidebook. Who gets to speak on this?
I will speak on that. Thank you. Just for communication purposes, I felt like I needed to make some changes and revisions prior to the start of the school year so that parents and students and teachers and families would be aware of these changes. So I'm bringing revisions to you tonight so that you can consider these for action at our next meeting. The first revision is just a movement of the FIAD replacement credit option. It was in a different spot in the guidebook. It's not really a revision other than just changing its place under our non-traditional section. It's more appropriately placed in that non-traditional because it requires that application like all our other non-traditional options. That's just a move.
Now, is that the replacement where you can get credit for being a varsity sport?
You can waive a 0.5 FIAD if you take another core area, 0.5.
Okay. Now, you're putting it in a non-traditional, is it referenced in the normal areas so people are aware?
Right, it's in the FIAD section. It always has been. Now
you're just adding it to the...
And it was on a random page in the old guidebook. Now it's just under a heading where it really belongs. The advanced placement testing, that is just one new sentence that's in the paragraph for AP testing in the revised book on page 8. And it's just to clarify that students who sign, the AP course is kind of twofold. It's the curriculum that's approved by the College Board along with the test that accompanies that curriculum to know whether or not our students are learning the things that they should be learning as determined by the College Board. The sentence that's added just says, students who take the AP course are expected to take the AP exam for that course as administered by the College Board. So we're setting that up as an expectation for all students. Right now we have students that are choosing to opt out of the AP exam. We really feel like our students are well prepared, and it will be a good reflection on our statistics for all students to take that test.
What are the consequences if they do? They don't take it?
No. It will continue to be optional. We're just encouraging them to do so, and it really is an expectation. If you're taking a course, that's the culminating exam for that course.
Okay.
So that sentence is revised. On January 5th, the board approved our new version of academic recognition, which is going to roll out over the next couple of years to replace the valedictorian language. So I added a sentence saying the designation of valedictorian is going to be discontinued with the class of 2019, and then added the chart which describes the academic recognition, which is shown on page 7, which is just putting into words and into place what was approved on January 5th.
I'm sorry, did you say the valedictorian? Did you mean class rank?
It's both.
It's all part of it.
Are we
I didn't know we were limiting. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's hand in hand.
So, what are we doing, I guess?
Okay. On page 7, if you look at the revised guidebook, page 7, this is what we're doing. Academic recognition will be given for graduates of the class of 2019 and beyond. So we're taking all students who graduate with a 4.0 or higher and classifying them as a graduate of high distinction. They also are required to have 4 more AP courses on their transcript, and they'll get a cord to wear, a color cord, as that recognition for high distinction. Graduates with a 3.75 or higher will have a color cord, and graduates with high honors will have a 3.5 GPA or higher, and they'll have taken 2 or more AP courses. So we will no longer be publishing class rank or recognizing a valedictorian or salutatorian. Students will be grouped by high distinction, distinction, or high honors.
So how's that, is that Wisconsin Excellence? What's that called?
Oh, yeah, the scholarship.
Yeah, so how are we doing that?
We're still going to be collecting GPAs, but we won't be ranking students based on that.
So what's the criteria right now for it? Who
For
gets
the scholarship
yeah.
criteria, that does not change the scholarship criteria. We still will be collecting GPAs for that purpose.
So we're still going to be awarding that to the valedictorian, just not calling him that? Or how's that work?
Right, it's just going to be based on a GPA. We're not going to label or give somebody a distinction of valedictorian. They will be a scholarship recipient.
For who would have been, I'm trying to clarify.
Yeah, it's based
Whoever
on
would have
GPA.
been top is still going to get that scholarship.
Yeah,
correct?
it doesn't change the criteria for the scholarship.
Is there an option? I know there's an option in the next 4 years for class rank if they want it.
Yes, that's right above, that's on page 7 also on the revised. It's not highlighted in yellow, but that's the class of 16, 17, and 18, what those changes are for them. So yes, it is an option.
Why wouldn't we just leave it as an option instead of saying absolutely not after 19? The reason I ask that is, go ahead.
The discussion that I just recently had was that there was in-state tuition. Texas has in-state tuition for the top 20 students
Of any
of
graduating
any
class,
graduating class.
any school.
So in order to get that, he needed to know that he was at least in the top 20. If we eliminated that altogether,
Students will still have GPA.
GPA doesn't help. He needs to know.
Basically, what he was told was, you get your class rank. If you're 20, you got in-state. If you're 21, you don't.
Yeah, and I'll have to ask, when this conversation happened with Christine Wiesbrock and the high school team, I'm not really exactly sure how to answer that question, whether that's going to be something that is just held but not published would be my guess, but I don't know for sure.
I guess the question I would have is what's the downfall of allowing, even after 19, to have students have it on their transcript at their request? We're going to do it up through 18. Why can't we just continue it?
It will be, our transcripts are generated by a software program. It's just not going to be an option to click on after that year. We can still look at it, I guess, through Infinite Campus, but it's not going to be an option that can print on the transcript.
Maybe we should make it an option.
This was already,
Well, I understand we went through this, but clearly we didn't all understand the details on it as much as we thought we did.
The way I remember being presented was we still have those class rankings, they just would not be published.
and
So we
I-
would still have a valedictorian, I thought,
No,
and a
no,
salutatorian. So I guess I misunderstood that portion of it,
yeah.
so.
Right. Yeah, no, the students and the committee at the high school that looked at this felt very strongly that this is how they wanted to be recognized in their class. This is really the kids speaking about, because that person had 1/100th of a 1/10 of a percent, 1/100th of a point higher than me, doesn't mean that I shouldn't get recognized. It really did come from the students.
Yeah. Well, I love the idea of the recognition as it will be,
Yes.
but we still have that issue of the Wisconsin academic. How many students does that affect in a class for Wisconsin? 5?
Oh, 4? I'd have to look.
The top 4?
I'd have to look. It won't change how we do the process of identifying scholarship recipients.
So who gets to speak at graduation?
We have to ask the high school. There might be class officers, I don't know. So that's included as an update that I wanted to get out sooner rather than later for our students and our families. And then lastly is the social studies
graduation requirement. And so I'll just explain to you what has changed with that. We've always required freshman year modern world history and sophomore year U.S. history. We're now recognizing AP World History or AP U.S. History as an alternative to those two, as just standard operating procedure. You can either take one or the other, and it will satisfy your U.S. history and your world history. In addition, students need one more credit of social studies for graduation. They can, and it needs to have a component of government and politics in one of those options. So the three options now would be AP Government and Politics. Option 2 is what we've always had, the one semester American Issues, the one semester of Econ. Option 3 has always been there also, so we'll keep that for 2 more years, but that will then be replaced by option 4. So available to the class of 2018 and beyond, our current sophomores. The 4th option would be to take any other AP Social Studies course, even if it doesn't have that government component in it. But in order to satisfy the government component, take the Wisconsin Framework packet to get that government piece that we require of all our graduating seniors. So option 4 is new, and it would actually replace option 3. So the basic changes are the addition of AP World History and AP US History as alternates for freshman and sophomore year. AP Government and Politics as option 1 for that 3rd credit, and option 4, which will roll out to the class of 2018 and beyond, which would be any AP Social Studies course with the Wisconsin Framework packet.
Does the Wisconsin Framework packet, that's anytime, summer, school year?
Yeah, I think most kids do it in the school year. It is part of what we're currently doing in option 3, so that won't be a change for students. They're pretty used to that. So this, by doing this, we actually are giving our students a little more flexibility in their scheduling options, and it gives them that automatic knowledge that, oh, those AP courses will just automatically take the place of the general ed course.
And we increased the social studies credits by 1.
We're not, no, we're not. It's still 3 credits. They're doing a world history credit, they're doing a U.S. history credit, and they have to have some component of government. And so they have 4 options to get that government component. So the new option is option 1. AP Government has never been laid out as you can just take this to satisfy that piece. And option 4, which is any AP Social Studies and the packet. So it's not a huge shift. It's really just recommunicating. We've had all this increase in these AP courses over the years, yet this has never really been addressed to clean this up and really make this understandable for our parents and students.
So is this coming back for action next meeting?
Yes.
Can we get some clarification on some of the issues that we brought up?
On the academic recognition?
Yeah.
Yes.
Who speaks at graduation if we're not going to have a quote-unquote valedictorian?
Okay.
That was your point. Have you got an answer on your question?
You got an answer, it just wasn't what I was thinking.
Right, I have an answer to it. I don't know when it, so I think the spirit of what we were trying to do is help our students, right? Especially when they're competing against other districts that may be different class rank for a number of different reasons. Well, what we do could ultimately harm a student or, in this case, cost them money it brings concern. And that's what I'm wrestling with right now. So that's why you see, I'm just wrestling with that.
Can you come back with
Yeah,
some
let me bring back,
suggestions on that?
I will, let me bring back, if we're housing class rank in-house, that we can provide a student as requested if it were in a situation like that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
if our response to the students is it's because our software program won't allow us to do it and it costs them $10,000 more to go to school because of that, I don't want to give them any concern.
No, I understand.
Right? I mean,
I understand. Okay.
Well, just to clarify where you're coming from, the top 3 or 4 get the Wisconsin academic.
No, he's
it has
talking about
nothing to do
something
with
else.
that. It has to
What I-
do with,
University of Texas specifically.
and this was just a specific instance, but I can't imagine it's limited to just the school. It's, if a student wants their class rank, and I think we should be able to give it to them. I understand why we did what we did, and I still support that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it affects them.
Whether it's for admission or scholarships or some other legitimate reason from the right?
I think they covered it, but I'm not going to.
The one concern I have on that is how colleges start reacting to as more and more schools like us start doing this.
Yeah.
If colleges start requiring the students to request it because they know it's available, then then I have concerns with it. Then it probably does need to go away because it will ultimately hurt our students. It'll hurt more students than it'll help in the long run. So I'm just saying down the line. Right now it's not the case, but that may be the issue. Maybe an issue.
Well, they could change and adapt to whatever we do eventually, right?
Well, no, I mean their adaptation. If we don't have the information, they can't make us generate it. You know what I mean? So for now, I think we're okay. But I guess a lot of schools are going this way. High achieving schools are going this way.
We all.
In fact, I had a phone call on the way here that I answered incorrectly. Then I have to make a phone call as soon as I leave this meeting about the valedictorian. So.
What's that about?
I said, were we all on the same page with not having a valedictorian? I know Lisa wasn't.
Yep.
I just want to make sure that we were all know that we do not.
I think it's going to change nothing, other than you're going to have your highest performing person still speaking at the graduation. Everybody will know he or she's the valedictorian. They just won't label them.
You know, I was thinking, and granted that this is a different venue, but I'll use my law school as an example. It had nothing to do with grades. There was a student committee established with some faculty members, and you presented to them what your speech would be, and you got voted, your class speaker.
I've seen it done
I
that
did
way,
not
too.
get voted. Instead, Josh did, okay, just so you know. That's,
Son of a gun.
but right, so that's just one example of a way that it can be done. And so it has nothing to do with that.
Yeah,
And sometimes the kids, you get to hear it ahead of time, so there's something there. And with that, sometimes there's English teachers on there, sometimes there's, whatever. But that's one way that I've seen it happen.
I don't write mine until the night before, so I would never be able to get on there.
You were a lot. You were okay.
So was yours going to be about kindergarten?
I remember it being really good, though.
And if they speak or don't speak at graduation, that's not an issue for me. I really don't care who speaks. And over the last, 15 years that I've been on the board or whatever, how long it's been, half the kids that speak at the valedictorian are excellent, and half are, so there probably was somebody else that could do a better job at it. So, I don't really care about that, but I am concerned about the scholarship part, so.
I'll clarify that.
Because that's taking 80 grand out of a number of kids' pockets. All right, anything else on this? Information follow-up?
Can we get an update on the pool?
Sure. I don't have one right now, but I will
If
definitely.
you did, you couldn't give it to them.
Right.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Bye.
We are adjourned at 8:50. Thank you, everyone.